for our listeners, and honestly for me, and I've read up on it, and I think to some extent there is a lot of confusion as it comes to this landmark settlement that's brewing here, this House settlement. In layman's terms, what's the significance of this potential settlement for the NCAA?
I think the most significant thing is that for the next 10 years, it would mitigate the chances of an NIL antitrust lawsuit based on the terms of this current settlement. And this settlement will grab two other outstanding antitrust NIL lawsuits and possibly a fourth, as I understand it.
So the impact of the settlement, presuming or assuming it's completed at some point in the near future, what does it mean specifically for the Mountain West Conference?
Yeah, let me just clarify. I don't have any inside information. We're not a defendant in that lawsuit. So I'm basically, what I've read and what I've heard. So just want to say that. And then what it means for the Mountain West. Yeah. Well, as you know, everyone's on the hook for some piece of the settlement relative to the percentage of revenue distribution we receive from the NCAA.
So are there ramifications then? As in, the Mountain West didn't have a say in the potential financial ramifications for the conference itself and its member institutions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what will it mean? I mean, I know it's hard to fast forward, but as you look ahead, that type of financial penalty for the members within your conference, including San Diego State, what type of bearing or impact will it have on their athletic departments?
It's not nothing, but it also isn't putting us on the edge of closing our doors. You know what I mean? I think we've budget fiscally conservatively and we've exceeded our budget expectations year over year. Certainly our teams performing better have offset some of the revenue increases we've had over the past year are helping offset that. So it's not good, but we will survive.
Gloria Nevarez is with us right now on San Diego Sports 760, the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference. Is this a narrative, or is this accurate that does this type of settlement create more of a gap between power leagues and non-power leagues? Or the gap has already existed in the structure between power and non-power. Does this widen the gap or not necessarily?
Tough for me to say right now. I mean, the gap was increased during our CFP financial negotiations where they took a lion's share of the revenue distribution. But I also had heard during that they had anticipated damages or a settlement in the House litigation. So certainly it just went from one pot to another. I think their media agreements certainly contribute to the widening gap. But one of the things that I hope makes it through all of this, if we increase scholarship limits, right? Because right now we have some scholarship limits that don't really attach or have relation to squad sizes, and allow schools to scholarship a full roster, but that is accompanied with roster limits. In other words, say baseball got limited at, I'm picking a number, I haven't making it up, 35. Any school could fully scholarship 35, but student athletes 36, 37, 38 wouldn't be able to play, even if they were fully scholarshiped or fully NIL'd, getting paid somehow. And if the transfer portal showed us anything, it's that student athletes don't like to sit.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? So you'd be spreading out the wealth, so to speak, among student athletes, among institutions potentially with these limits.
Because the greater number of spots, the number of schools have not increased. But if there are roster limits, then that could help us continue to compete in that talent pool.
Makes sense. Gloria Nevarez is with us right now, and John and Jim. Help me understand some of the reporting I've seen over previous weeks or months about this idea that there's at least a possibility in like a future Group of Five playoff. But that to me is interesting timing, considering that Group of Five conferences have for a long time hoped for access to the college football playoff. And now the college football playoff has expanded and there is access. So why is there any interest, or is there any interest from any party at the Group of Five level in having a Group of Five playoff as opposed to just an expanded CFP with Group of Five access?
Currently, there's no interest by the Mountain West, and I haven't heard from colleagues, peer colleagues, of a great interest. I think it's been sporadic or maybe at the institutional level. Certainly, we're always open to innovative new ideas that infuse the system with more, resources. But you articulated the number one argument as to why we would not walk away from the CFP lightly.
Is it your belief the way it's structured? Maybe it's a little bit in the weeds, but it starts this year. Like if there's a team, let's say in the Mountain West, that is the top group of 5 champion, whomever it is, Boise State, San Diego State, whomever, any of the member institutions, would it be your belief that they'll be like, will they automatically be slotted at the back of the playoff? If some team has a remarkable year, they go undefeated, they win the conference championship against another very good team, or will they be seated appropriately? Or is there a belief that they'll just be seated in the back of the line, so to speak?
Yeah, no, they will get in, but the seating will, it depends. It's still TBD, and the details have to be ironed out, but I don't think it's automatic they'll be last. If they are ranked somewhere in the top 10 or in the top 5, they should be seated accordingly.
Absolutely. All right, so we found out earlier.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I was going to say we have heard rumors and concepts about some automatic AQs. That would certainly affect seating in the top part of the bracket, but those are just concepts at this point. It still needs to be decided.
So we found out earlier this week, Commissioner, that the Mountain West title game on Fox is going to be like an exclusive window, right? On a Friday evening beginning this fall in 2024. What's the impact? What does that mean for the league?
Everything you just said, a greater exposure for fans and student athletes. I think it's a clear air window and a high profile platform. We're really, really excited about the opportunity.
Does the breakup of the Pac-12, and I know obviously you have a relationship right now with the Pac-12 with Oregon State and Washington State, but does the breakup of the Pac-12 have any impact on TV windows and TV viewership experiences in the fall of 2024? I know we haven't seen the full TV schedule as of yet. We've just seen bits and pieces, but will television be impacted at all with the lack of a Pac-12 conference, so to speak?
Well, again, think about the inventory hasn't gone anywhere. Those schools are still playing in this time zone. They're just playing for different leagues and now maybe playing for different television partners. So certainly there's an impact. And we're going through the process right now, but I wouldn't say it's statistically dramatic.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think it was, we had you on maybe last year, Football Media Day, and I think you said a year ago that you think about or you meet about realignment essentially every single day. Has that changed over the last 1 year or not?
Less so are the topics about realignment as of late, because as of the CFP ESPN deal, I think that we might have settled that unless something happens with the ACC lawsuits. We may be in for a little bit of stability as far as realignment, but we are constantly looking at who we are, who we want to be, what are those criteria that would trigger a school to be of interest to us and make us stronger, or, how do we look at membership? So while we're not constantly about realignment, we're constantly looking at our size, our membership criteria, and how do we get where we want to be.
Generally speaking, is there maybe more aggressiveness among conferences? Like I look at what the WCC did recently, adding Grand Canyon University and Seattle University, and obviously, non-football institutions, but adding specifically with, basketball as revenue, but other Olympic sports as well. How is that move perceived, and how does that impact the Mountain West, if at all?
Not as much, because as you know, the media dollars and the other income streams orbit a lot around football.
Yep.
And so that's really one of the drivers when we think about how realignment impacts us. And, from what I've seen of the CFP agreements, there is some stability built in there. I don't think there's no room for schools or leagues to increase what they're currently getting from the CFP. Media deals have been locked in. We're actually one of the last collegiate properties to go to market in 26. So by and large, media dollars have stabilized to some degree. So again, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I think we may be hitting at least 8 to 10 years of stability.
You mentioned the Mountain West TV deal. Gloria Nevarez is with us right now, and Jon and Jim. A couple of more for you, Commissioner. We appreciate your time. You mentioned, Mountain West, its future TV rights and negotiations. How well positioned do you feel the league is? And I know you're still kind of looking into the future, but what do you believe the league's priorities are going to be when it comes to its next TV deal?
That's a little, given our current environment, you can't tell what's happening day to day, but I'm very, very optimistic about not going to market this past year, because as we saw with some other leagues, it was a down point in the market. And then two, given the success on the field, given our viewership, our fan base is so amazing. They tune in, they show up. Those are the things. And, given all the success we had in men's basketball, our brand is elevating and is, nationally recognizable. And so those are the things that you look at when you want to position before you go to market. And we're trending in the right direction.
And speaking of basketball, like you said, all the successes, men's and women's, 6 teams in men's basketball making the NCAA tournament last year. You've had the Mountain West tournament for years and years and years at the Thomas and Mack. Of course, the Pac-12 no longer will be at T-Mobile. Will there be any determination made at some point, or has a determination been made about Thomas and Mack or another venue beyond this upcoming spring?
We will be in Thomas and Mack this coming season.
Yep.
And we're just working on all options. And, a lot of it, there's a lot of devil in the detail and dates and calendars and formats. So still working through a lot of that.
And then finally, is it officially official? I know there's a lot of chatter about the men's basketball conference schedule. It was 18 games for a number of years. Then we learned it's going to 20. Then there was some discussion about what the chair said about the difference between having a good non-conference schedule and not, and the back and forth. So is it official? Will the Mountain West be playing a 20-game conference schedule in men's basketball this upcoming season?
We will be playing the 20 game. That did not change, although, we have our board meeting next month, but there's no recommendation to change. So it will be 20 games. But we took a really deep dive with our athletic directors and coaches last month at the meeting, and we looked at everything. Yep. We talked about the comments. We looked at the data, and, a lot of the commentary around non-conference was statistically unfounded. We looked a lot like those other leagues. And so to your point, there's a lot of work to be done about brand and perception, and, nothing turns that ship like continuing to win. But we look at that stuff every year, and particularly after some of the comments in the media, we took an even deeper dive this year.
And of course, the Mountain West enjoying its most success ever in the sport of men's basketball. 14 tournament teams, 4 for 2 years, 6 this past year. A team, San Diego State, of course, in a national championship game 2 years ago. You were there. And of course, last year, San Diego State in the Sweet 16 in Boston as well. Commissioner, always appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you again soon. We'll be in Vegas for Mountain West Media Days coming up in early July. Thank you for taking time for San Diegans, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you, and see you soon.